G'day painters. Today we're continuing my 1000 Suns with something a bit special, an old school Aspiring Sorcerer. I have literal tubs of Warhammer that I've collected over the last 28 years, and while I was looking through one of my tubs for something else, I found two of these. The old resin upgrade kits for Rubric Marines. While I probably won't use most of it, the Aspiring Sorcerer is cool, and I want to use at least one of them in my army as a throwback. So that's what we're painting today. Let's get to it. After cleaning him up and removing the base slot part, I primed him, then hit him with Diabolic Plum through the airbrush. Then I got to work blocking everything in. I started with Resplendent Red for his robes. I'll be doing most of the cloth across my army as red, as I think it goes well with the purple, off-white and gold that are the other main colours of my army. Next is Retributer Armour to do the trim and other gold parts. As you'd expect, this was the longest step, but thankfully not as long as it is on the rubrics. If you've watched my rubric video, you'll know that I tried both starting from gold and from purple, and I've decided for my army to start from purple. Starting from gold is a bit quicker, but there are a few issues with it that made me decide to start purple instead. If you want more information on my reasoning, check out my rubrics video. Then with Boney Spikes, I did the lines on his headdress. The lines on this guy's headdress are much thinner than the modern rubrics, so if you're having a bad brush control day, I'd definitely leave this for a day when your hands are behaving. With the black, I block in all the tubing and soft armor parts. I also do the weapon grips. At this point, I hadn't decided how I was going to do the sword, and I ended up leaving it for the very end, but when I got to the sword, I started it from black, so you could definitely block the sword blade in black now, if you're following along at home. With Death Metal, I blocked in the gun and the exhaust ports on his power pack. I'm sure you've noticed, but I left the power pack off as a sub-assemble while I'm doing all the blocking in. Probably should have mentioned that earlier. There are a few chains around this model that I didn't want to be either gold or death metal, so I just broke out plate mail to carefully block them in. The next step will be the shading, but I glue the power pack on first. That way when I'm doing the shading I can keep the shadows consistent. And the first shade is soft tone for the gold. In my rubrics video I mentioned I was going to try doing the soft tone for both the purple and gold to save some time. I did try this out and I didn't like it, so I'm back to using soft tone just for the golds. And then Magenta Tone for the robe. This didn't give me the shadows I was looking for, so I end up doing more work on them later, but I think it's still worth doing the wash just to start the shadows off at least. And the last shade is purple tone for the purples. It would have been nice for the soft tone to work for both the purple and gold, but in the end it doesn't add too much more time and it looks way better using the purple tone. Time for highlights. I start with the purple highlights first, starting with Magecast Magenta. I'm using this to establish where I want my highlights, covering a decent amount of the purple, but leaving the Diabolic Plum and purple tone in the recesses, shadowed parts, and just any places that wouldn't be getting decent light. Then I use Warlock Magenta for the next layer, working in the places I established in the previous step, just working in smaller areas, leaving some of the previous layer showing to build up a nice gradient. I also use this as a final highlight for spots that are only getting some light. Then, as the final highlight for spots getting plenty of light, it's Spellbound Fuchsia. This is just the helmet, shoulders, and power pack. Once again working within the previous step, just in smaller areas to keep that gradient nice and smooth. Now for the robes. As I mentioned earlier, I wasn't happy with the shadows the wash gave, so I wanted to deepen them a bit. So I took Basilisk Red and just painted in the shadows to make them clearer. I used a cool red here because I'm using warm reds on the robes normally, while shadows are normally a cooler shade than the colours surrounding them. Once I was happy with the shadows, it was back to warm reds for the highlighting. With the Angelic Red, I started establishing the highlights. I'm just picking out the raised parts and parts facing upwards that the light would be hitting, making sure to avoid the recesses and the nice shadows I established in the previous step. And then Legendary Red to finish off the highlights, working inside the previous step and just picking out the parts that would be picking up the most light. While I finish those highlights, why don't you give the video a like? And if you're enjoying the video and want to see more from me, hit that subscribe button. I'm a tiny channel and every single like and subscription means a lot. Then with Pale Sand, I highlight the off-white parts. For this, I highlight towards the top and outside corner for the headdress. Then for the parts that are like flowing down, I just pick out whatever would be the most upwards facing part. Then with white, I carefully block in the eyes. You could definitely do this part before doing the purple highlights. That'll allow you to fix any mistakes you make. I didn't think of it earlier, so I did it in the wrong order. Then Warp Lightning Contrast to get the glow on the eyes. Finally, it's time to do something about the sword. I wanted to do it before I highlight the gold, so if I mess up the gold, I can fix it during the highlighting step. After some thought, I decided to try something new. I like trying new things when painting models, it's the best way to learn and improve. So since the sorcerers normally have psychic weapons, I decided to try painting this as a psychic weapon. So I started by blocking it in black. Then, since all my Zinch demons and my rubrics have green as the flame and psychic colour, I went to Angel Green next. I blocked in opposite sections with this. For the top section, I did about a third of the sword, then a bit over a third for the middle section. Once they were all blocked in, I did a bit of glazing to smoothen out the transition. I want it to be a pretty big jump, but still want the transition to not be too stark. Then I took Greenskin and blocked in a section in the middle of the Angel Green. I covered around 50% of the Angel Green section with this. I also, once again, did some glazing to smooth out the transition. It's a big jump, but that doesn't mean it has to be a stark transition. You can still have a smooth one. And then to finish it off, it was Rainforest, covering around a third of the Greenskin, once again smoothing out the transitions. I also used Rainforest to do an edge highlight for the entire blade. I'm pretty happy with how the sword came out. It was something new for me, and it's always great when you try something new and it comes out awesome on the first try. Now that the sword is done, all that's left is highlighting the metallics. I start with bright gold to highlight the golds. For my rubrics, I did 2 steps of gold highlights before the final highlight, but I think that was unnecessary, and 1 gold highlight before the next highlight is plenty. True metallics already take care of a fair bit of the highlighting for us anyway. Then the final highlight for the gold is an edge highlight with Mithril, just picking out the edges that are facing upwards and would be picking up the most light. I also use this to do the rivets on the power pack. Always paint the rivets. And then the final step is gunmetal to highlight the death metal. And once he's glued to his base, we're done. I'm pretty happy I decided to use this guy in my army. While the scale is off, like he's much smaller than modern rubrics, I think he's a great throwback and adds some character to my army. He took 4 hours to get painted, but I think that's fine. That's only a few minutes longer than my rubrics per model, and he's a unit hero, so taking a bit of extra time on him's normal. Though my Thousand Suns army is going to take an insane amount of hours to reach 2000 points. But I'll get there, and it's gonna look amazing on the table. Thanks for watching, and as always, if you've enjoyed the video, why not give it a like? And if you've not subscribed yet, hit that button too while you're there. Catch you in the next video.